Hello my dear students and welcome back to Excellence Batch, and I am your Diksha ma'am, and I hope you all have studied the previous lectures really very well. In the previous lectures we have completed the evidences of evolution, that how can we just give some evidence or proofs that evolution is basically taking place, right? So now it's time to study the theories of evolution, the mechanism of evolution. There were some scientists, some theorists, some researchers who actually put their entire life, gave theories to explain how did evolution would have taken place, right? So let's study their contribution. Let's know about their contribution in the field of evolution. The first scientist is Lamarck, and he gave the theory Lamarck's theory. And Lamarck's theory is also known as theory of inheritance of acquired characters. Theory of inheritance of acquired characters, or use and disuse of organ. Use or disuse of organ. Okay, so there were three names for this theory: the Lamarck's theory, or theory of inheritance of acquired character, or theory of use and disuse of organ. So this theory obviously was given by the Lamarck, who was the scientist here. His full name was Jean Baptiste de Lamarck. He gave this theory in a book, Philosophicae Zoologicae. So what did he said? What were the postulates of the theory? What did he said? The first thing, he explained this theory with the help of this organism that you can see is your giraffe. What did Lamarck said? Lamarck said that first of all, whenever any organism have to undergo evolution, there is always a change in the environment. There is always the change in the environment. So that change in environment always creates a need for change. For example, if these are giraffe, he said that giraffe earlier, the primitive giraffe, they had a neck just like a neck of a horse. So they were herbivorous, and they used to eat the vegetation on the ground, and they were very happy. So there is a change in environment, the entire grass or the vegetation on the ground, it vanishes. So now giraffe has to eat something. So what did he do? So the change in environment was the grass, it completely vanished. So that created a need for the change. Now it's time to change. So what did he said next? Okay, so if there is a change, or there is a change that we need to make, then what happened? The organism should also have a desire to change. For example, the giraffe, if at that time did not have any desire to change and said, okay, if I die, I died, no problem. So desire for change is very important for an organism. If the organism does not have a desire to change, the organism can never change. For example, if you don't have a desire to study, you will never study, and you will never become anything you want to be. Fine. Then after that, the cells of the organism also have a power. It also have certain forces. He called them as internal vital force. He said all these forces which are present in the cells, they help the organism to change. Okay, one thing, the environment got changed, a need created. When a need created, organism said, okay, now I will change. So now the cells of the organism also have a force, which he called it as internal vital force, that helps to change, right? Internal vital forces in cell that helps to change. Okay, so we have a force, we have desire, and there is also a need to change. Now, what will happen next? Now, whatever organism, whatever body part organism is using more, that will become more specialized, and the one the organism will not use, with due course of evolution, that organ will get reduced. He gave the example that giraffe keep on using his neck to eat the upper vegetation. So, eventually with time, the neck of the giraffe, it increased in length. Also, he said like vermiform appendix, we don't use them, right? So with evolution, the vermiform appendix in us, it also get reduced. So he said that more used organ will become specialized, like the neck of a giraffe, and less used get reduced. So from here he used the word use and disuse of organ. Use and disuse of organ. Okay, then whatever character the organism have gained due to the use of the organ, or whatever character that has become specialized due to this will get inherited in the progeny. Then there will be inheritance. Inheritance means passing. Of which character? Acquired. Acquired means the one you have taken it after life, after you got born. Okay, so the acquired character, there will be inheritance of that acquired character to progeny. Progeny means next generations. So this is how Lamarck explained his entire theory with the help of a neck of a giraffe. Okay, now let's read this. He gave the example of giraffe who is in an attempt to forage leaves on tall trees had to adapt by elongation of their neck. This line explains that Lamarck said these giraffe, they have to take their neck up so that they can take and eat the leaves. Okay, so this leads to elongation of the neck. As they passed on this acquired character of elongated neck to succeeding generation, giraffes slowly over the years came to acquire long necks. Nobody believes in this conjecture anymore. So last line itself explained this theory is completely rejected now. So why there were rejections? What were the drawbacks? First of all, the drawbacks were explained by Mendel's laws of inheritance. In meanwhile, the Mendel has explained factors which are today known as genes. And he said that genes are the only things that are passed on from one generation to the another, not the characters like that, right? Whatever character is there in the factors, only that can be inherited. Similarly, the second theory, the theory of germ plasm, which was given by Weizmann, also rejected the Lamarck's theory. So what did Weizmann did? Weizmann had rats, right? And he cut the tail of the rat for over 22 generation. And in every generation, he found out that whatever rat was born to that female rat have the tail. So if you are cutting the tail of the mother, but still the babies are grown with the tail, even over 22 generation. So that means whatever character is there in the somatic cell will never be inherited. Only those changes will be inherited which are there in the germ cells. Germ cells are ova and sperm. For example, if I grow my body, or if a man grows a body, have a lot of muscle, their child is never born with the large muscles. Why? Because this character is in their somatic cells, not in the germ cell. So by that, what they concluded, they said that the characters in the germ cells are inherited, are only inherited. Okay, what are germ cells? Ova and sperm. And what are somatic cell? Other cells of the body. If you put any change in those, for example, if a female is born with a very thin lips, but later on she undergo plastic surgery and have very plumpier lips, so the babies will not be have a plumpier lips because she underwent the plastic surgery later on. The changes were done in the somatic cell. if the female naturally have the plumpier lips in her generations, right, in her ancestors also, the baby will also be formed with the plumpier lips. That's the difference. Just like if someone generation have like crooked teeth, so later on maybe they will also have different kind of teeth. So the things you change after in your life, that changes will never be inherited in your progeny. Your progeny will be born as you were born. Okay, so this was the Lamarck theory, which was later on get rejected. Let's move to the next theory, that's Darwin's theory. This theory was given by Charles Darwin. So this theory was given by Charles Darwin, and what are the other name of the theory? Theory of natural selection. Theory of natural selection. This is also known as the theory of natural selection. Okay, so Charles Darwin wrote a book, and the name of his book was Origin of Species. And in this book, he completely explained how the organisms, they undergo evolution, and how new species are formed by natural selection. So the full form of this book is Origin of Species by Natural Selection, but if you want to buy, you can buy it on the name of Origin of Species. Okay, so what did Darwin said? First of all, what did Darwin said? Important is, what were the studies of the Darwin, and from which studies Darwin was inspired. So his work was inspired by, first of all, the essays on population by Malthus. Malthus was a scientist who did a research. He gave a theory on population. So his theory was essays on population. Okay. So what did Malthus say? He said that the organisms always multiply in a faster than the natural resources, or we can say natural resources, they grow slower than the reproduction rate of the organism. So this was the work of Malthus. Malthus says that organisms multiplies faster than natural resources. So his essay was, the Darwin read the essays of Malthus, and he little got tricked by his theory, and he came up with the idea. Another thing he was inspired by, the Darwin was inspired by, was organisms in South America and Galapagos Island. Like I have already told you an example of Darwin's finches. Okay, so study was also based on the Galapagos Island and the comparison of organism in Galapagos Island and South America. Third, organisms which are living and extinct. So organisms which are living and which are no more present, how are they different from each other? This was also the inspiring part of his theory. That means he read all these and then he gave the theory. And the fourth thing was artificial selection. What is artificial selection? So today we made a lot of artificial plants. We made artificial, not the artificial non-living one, no. The one we make by breeding and so. For example, broccoli is not naturally grown, but we have made it by the breeding. There are different breeds of animals like dogs. They do not exist naturally, but we have made them, right? So all these things Darwin has read and he worked on, and then he gave his theory. Let's talk about Darwin's theory in more detail. So what were the postulates of this theory? What did he actually said? He said that always, first of all, organisms will show overproduction. Overproduction. What is overproduction? That means the organisms will always multiply at the maximum rate. Whenever any organisms have all the environmental conditions, the crucial conditions, whatever the organism need, the organisms will tend to multiply faster. For example, if someone has everything in their house, right? If a couple, like in India, we usually say if a couple is married, doing financially good, everything is there, happiness is there, the family started to say have a baby, right? So when all the conditions are ideal, The organism's inner capacity instinct is to multiply and leave their progeny on the land, right? So on the land means on earth, fine. So organism if have all the conditions which are natural, fine, and all the ambient conditions are there, organism will multiply at a faster rate. Let me give you one more example of paramecium. If you're growing paramecium and if you give paramecium all the appropriate conditions, the paramecium can grow so much that it can become a size of a ball of the earth. Yes, but it does not occur because when there is overcrowding of organism, they started producing toxins. Okay, so organisms will always show overproduction. That means organisms will multiply at maximum reproductive rate. If we talk about humans, we are also increasing so much. Why? Because we are multiplying at a maximum reproductive rate. Okay. Now, next thing that will occur will be the change in environment. Now, because now here he used the T.S. Malthus essay on population. He said if organisms are multiplying at a maximum reproductive rate, but if we compare their reproduction or their multiplication rate with natural resources will go down, organisms will increase. So not everyone will be able to have the natural resources. Like right now we are so much that the prices of everything is so higher. So people who are not very rich or who are poor, they're not even able to have a food of even one time, right? So that means those people, they are struggling for their existence. Why? Because now there is environmental change, though we have shown the reproduction at higher rate, but because natural resources are not so much, there is a limited food and space. So now people have to go for struggle for existence, right? Imagine I have a place where I have like 100 animals. Now these animals, they are also reproducing at a maximum rate, but I have food for 100 animals only, and in meanwhile I have food for 100 only, and they have multiplied from 100 to 1000, but the food is reducing at a faster rate and it's growing very little. So what is happening? Space is limited, the food is also limited. Now organism will start killing each other, and that is what is competition. So the competition will arise. Just like in NEET exam, we have like more than 20 lakh students every year, but the seats are very limited. So there is a hard competition for existence. Okay, so there is a change in environment. What is the change in environment? That is limited food and space. When there is limited food and space, there comes the struggle for existence. Why? Because there will be competition. There will be competition. Okay, this competition can be between the same species, it can be between the different species. Alright, now the competition arises here. Now what will happen? So any organism, for example, I have this population. In this population, all organisms are of A type. Imagine these all organism belongs to A species. They were multiplying at a faster rate. Now the food resources are limited. Now what they will do? They will start killing each other. Now the one which is powerful will get selected, or we can say, for example, these are all bacteria of species A. Now the condition is that oxygen start to deplete. All these bacteria, they grow in oxygen condition. They all grow in oxygen condition. If the condition arises that oxygen start to decrease, now many of them will start to die. Okay, let me just do this one. Imagine all these are bacteria. What are these? Bacteria. Now what happened? All are aerobic bacteria. All are aerobic bacteria. Now the condition is that there is low oxygen condition. That's the change in the environment. Okay, low oxygen and less food. Now the bacteria, some of the bacteria will die, only few will survive. Only few will survive. Okay, now why did they survive? They survived because they were better than the other. Now why they are better than the other? Darwin said they are better because they have some changes in them. which are known as small scale variation. When they were multiplying at that time, some of the organism of this species have built-in characters in them. They built some variations, small scale variations in them over the period of time. But these variations were not seen. Why? Because there was no one to select them. There was no change in the environment to select them, because now there is a change in the environment. These organisms, because they have these changes over the time, they got naturally selected in this changing environment, which he said that leads to the formation of new species. Now all these A which are selected, they have become the different species. They are known as like BB. Okay, they are now new species, because they have different character than these one. Okay, so what he said, there will be a competition. Now organisms with built-in small scale variations will be naturally selected. So also known as survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest was never given by Darwin. This was given by some other scientist, right? So now this organism has formed a new species. Now the character, they will multiply more because these organisms, they are fit in this environment now. They will multiply at faster rate. And inherit the character in progeny, and the babies will also have this character. So this is how he said there will be formation of new species. So according to Darwin, any organism is fit in the character, or if I say if there is any organism that is fitting in the environment, not the character, any organism, if it is fitting in that particular environment, is the one who have these built-in characters. And how do we get to know that organism is the most fit one? The most fit one is the one which is multiplying most, because only organism get multiply only when the organism have the ambient condition. If organism does not have the ambient condition, the organism will never show the maximum reproductive rate. So according to Darwin, the fitness was the reproductive fitness. The real fitness was reproductive fitness. That means more organism grow or more organism reproduce. That means the organism is fit and adapted and naturally selected. Okay, so what were the two key concepts of Darwinism? If I want to have two key concepts out of this Darwinism theory, also known as Darwin's theory, is also known as Darwinism. So the first concept is natural selection. He explained that how organisms are naturally selected. The second is branching descent. What is a branching descent? Branches, you understand, like a branches of a tree. Descent means to go down. So he said that everywhere, always the organisms are of the A species type. Whenever there is change in environment, they have built-in characters which changes them. Some remains A only, others becomes B. Now again the same thing happens over time. The B becomes B, or B remains the B, and some they changes into C. So always one of them is naturally selected, other is removed. So the branch of a tree is formed like that, and always they will be having a common ancestor. Like this, these one are having the common ancestor. Okay, one will always have a common ancestor. So this is what branching descent is. Alright, so what are the two key concepts of Darwinism? Natural selection and branching descent. So according to Darwin, the real fitness is the reproductive fitness. More the organism grow in a particular environment, more the organism is selected. Okay, alright, let's move further and talk about the evidences Darwin gave. So yes, Darwin also gave the evidences, like Lamarck gave the evidence of giraffe. Lamarck also gave the evidence of ducks. that ducks have flippers, though they are birds, they swim. Lamarck also gave the evidence of the snakes. They are reptiles, but they don't have limbs because they never use limb. So limb gets reduced. Okay. So just like that, Darwin also gave his evidences. The first is DDT resistant mosquito antibiotic resistance. So what about DDT resistant mosquito? He said that earlier, if you have heard, these people who take care of all your municipal things, right? They used to spray a chemical whenever there is a breakout of mosquitoes or any breakout of mosquito-borne disease. Even now, whenever there is a breakout of dengue or malaria, these people from municipal corporation, they come and spray chemicals, right, in the environment so that the mosquitoes, they die and you should know, you have no disease. Okay. So earlier, people used to spray DDT to kill the mosquito, but later on, we realized that mosquitoes were not killed by the DDT. Why? Because over the period of time, these mosquitoes, they got resistant towards the DDT. How? Because whenever they were multiplying, they were showing maximum reproductive rate. At that time, some of the mosquito, they produce some built-in characters, small scale variations, right? And these small scale variation, help them to survive in the environment of DDT, and hence they got resistant to that chemical, and when you will spray the chemical, they will not die. So this is how the same way antibiotic resistance occur. Many bacteria, with the period of time, they got adapted to the antibiotic, and when you will now give the antibiotic to them, the bacteria will not die. So this is how he explained to resistance, DDT and antibiotic resistant, to tell that how the changes in the environment, the changes of the characters in the organism leads to their adaptation and natural selection into that particular environment. Okay. Then he explained about sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is a disorder. It's a genetic disorder in which organism produce the RBC which are sickle shape, like this. Sickle shaped RBCs. So in malaria prone region, that means region which have a lot of breakout of malaria, like in Africa, the organisms who are heterozygous in condition, heterozygous means like they have one normal gene or one normal allele and another defaulty allele of sickle cell anemia, they are naturally selected. They are naturally selected. That means they are resistant to malaria. They are resistant to malaria. If I'll go to these areas, I will get malaria and I can die of it if I am not treated. But these organisms, because I have normal alleles, right? I have HB, HbA. Okay, I don't have sickle cell anemia at all. So if any person who have heterozygous condition, that person is naturally selected in the malaria prone region. Let me tell you in more detail. For example, there are three types of organisms that exist. One are normal with normal alleles. Other are heterozygous for this disease, like we have discussed. Another are the one who are actually diseased, who have sickle cell anemia. Okay. Now these organisms, they have rounder RBC. They have rounder RBC. They have rounder RBC. Now ma'am, then what's the problem? They have rounder RBC in normal oxygen condition. But whenever there is low oxygen condition, they have rounder RBC. They have more rounder, few sickle shape, and they have more sickle shape RBC. Okay, here there are more normal and here there are like more sickle shape if we compare. Alright, that's why they are the diseased organism. Now, what is this rounder RBC? Let me write it. So, if the malaria causing organism Plasmodium gets a rounder fresh RBC, the organism can be attacked easily and RBC can be destroyed and a person can die of malaria. The person can have malaria and then die. Okay. Now, if a person is in the condition, again in the malaria prone region, but is having sickle cell anemia, that person will not have malaria. But in these conditions, the person can die of anemia. Why anemia? Because when the plasmodium attack the organism's RBC will undergo low oxygen condition, and when they undergo low oxygen condition, more sickle shape RBCs are formed. You understand? Imagine the plasmodium enter into a person who is having sickle cell anemia. When the plasmodium enter and went inside the RBCs here undergo less oxygen condition, and then they turn into sickle shape. When they turn into sickle shape, plasmodium cannot survive in them. So plasmodium cannot survive in sickle shape, in sickle shaped RBC. But the sickle shape RBC will be formed so much because low oxygen conditions are there. So the person's RBCs are no more normal. The person will face anemia and the person will die. Okay, what is in this case? Because here he has normal allele which is producing the normal RBC, and one allele which is producing the sickle shape. So the sickle shape will be formed. Because sickle shape is formed, there will be no malaria. But at the same time, the person is also having normal RBCs. Why? Because the person is having one normal allele. Right? So there will be no anemia. So this is how the organism is naturally selected. The organism is naturally selected. And here, because one allele is balancing the another, we also call it as balancing selection. What do you call it as? Balancing selection. You understand? Because it has both the defaulty alleles. So the sickle shaped RBCs will be more in number. More the sickle shaped RBC, more is the complication, the person will die of anemia. And yes, sickle shape will be formed. Why? Because once the plasmodium attack, the oxygen will go down. And when the oxygen go down, the RBCs turn into sickle shape. But when the RBCs turn into sickle shape, they cannot hold the plasmodium in them. That's a good thing. But the bad thing, they are turning sickle shape. Person will die of anemia. In this one, the same thing will occur. Plasmodium come, low oxygen condition, some RBC turn into sickle shape. And now, those sickle shape cannot accommodate. They cannot accommodate what? The plasmodium. So, no malaria. But at the same time, we also need normal RBCs for our bodily functions. So, for that, HbA will come into rescue, form the normal RBCs, and hence person's body will not feel anemia. In this case, because person have the rounder RBC, plasmodium can live, malaria can occur, person can die of malaria. So, these are naturally selected in malaria prone regions. Which one? Heterozygous. Okay. All right. Okay. So this was about sickle cell anemia. Next evidence he gave is of industrial melanism. What's industrial melanism? So it's a story of 1850 and 1920. 2 years. Okay. In 1850, the industries were very less. There was less industry. And whatever industry was a small scale industry. So the pollution was less, because you know industries make the maximum pollution. Yes. So industries were less, pollution was less. So the trees, let me draw the tree with the brown color. Is there any brown color? Okay, that's a kind of a brown color. So I hope you can see this, the trunk of a tree. I don't think so you can see it. Let me draw with another color then. So that's a tree trunk. And these are the leaves. Okay, this is how we used to make tree. Okay, so when there was no industry, there was no pollution at that time in the environment, the amount of the gray colored moth was more. Gray, or we also call it as like light colored moth. And the name of this moth was Biston batularia. Now, why the number of this moth was more? The black colored moth was less. Black colored moth was less. There are two species of moths. One is Biston batularia. Another is Biston carbonaria. Biston carbonaria is black in color. It's black moth. It's a melanized version of this moth. Melanized means it has more melanin pigment. It has those alleles which make more melanin pigment. That's why it's black in color. So in 1850, it was recorded that the number of the gray colored moth was more. And then it was recorded in 1920, the color of the black moth was more. Okay, in 1920, there were more Biston carbonaria. Now, what was the reason behind this? Because in 1850, there was no industry, the pollution was less. So, on the barks of the tree, the lichen was more. You all know lichen is a pollution indicator. Lichen was a pollution indicator. And on these lichen, okay, that's again visible color. On these lichen, imagine, this is the grey colored moth. On this lichen, the grey colored moth can easily camouflage. So when it can easily hide or camouflage on the lichen, the Biston betularia, if it can easily camouflage on the lichen, the predators which are the insectivorous birds, they cannot find them and cannot eat them. So these Biston betularia can easily escape from the grey colored moth. So we say that the grey colored moth or the light colored moth was naturally selected in this area because it can camouflage from the insectivorous birds, right? So this moth can camouflage. You understand what is camouflage? To hide with the same color. Can camouflage on lichen and escape insectivorous birds. But the black color moth can be easily visible on the lichen and hence it can easily be killed. The black colored moth, it can easily be killed by the insectivorous birds. But what happened in 1920? In 1920 comes the industrialization. What comes in 1920? Industrialization. My spellings are wrong. Industrialization. Okay, correct it. I'm not getting them. Okay. So industrialization come, there was a lot of industry. You know, sometimes it happens. You write on the board, you forget the spellings. Anyways, so industrialization come, that leads to more pollution. So there was more pollution. And when there was more pollution, the lichen went away. Because you all know, lichen loves fresh environment. The lichen can never be seen in a highly polluted cities. It can only be seen in the naturally jungles and all these areas, right? So, because lichens were not there, but industries were so much. So, when industries burn their coal, the black color soot, it start to deposit on the tree bark. So, now what is deposited on the tree bark? Black soot of coal. Now on this, what can easily camouflage? Black color moth. So black can hide on black soot. This is not the suit you wear, this is SOOT. Now which is naturally selected here? The black color moth is naturally selected. So by this, Darwin explained that this is how the organism, they are naturally selected with change in environment. This was another evidence. Okay, so let's do this question. Industrial melanism is an example of neo-Lamarckism, neo-Darwinism, natural selection and mutation. Very simple. It's an example of natural selection. Okay, alright, so it's a previous year question, so it's need to be done. Next is the types of natural selection. Now there are different types of natural selection. It's not just one, there are 3 types of natural selection. For example, the first one is maintenance or stabilizing. Second is directional. And third is disruptive. We have 3 types of natural selection. One is your maintenance or stabilizing. Second is the directional. Third is disruptive. Okay, what's the difference? So let me explain this with the graph. For example, this is a graph of a normal population with no competition, no natural selection, everything is going good. So here we have three types of organisms or individual, one with the A type of character, another with the B type of character, other with the C type of character, or we can say we have three types of variants, A, B and C. How many types of variants we have? Three variants, A, B and C. Okay, B is always the average character, whereas A and C, they are extreme variants. They are the extreme variants, or the, we can say, like, let me give you an example. Organisms in humans, right, in humans we have organism mostly of the height of 5'3" to 5'5" in range. There are very few who are like adults, I'm talking about adults, who are below 4 feet, and there are very few who are like above 7 feet or so. Okay, so 7 feet and 4 feet, they are extreme variants, but having the height between 5'3" to 6 feet around, if we take that, that is the average. So many people have around this much of height. Okay, so if the organism environment is the one with no natural selection, there is no competition going on. Okay, for longer period of time, there is no competition. There is no competition and no natural selection. Then after a period of time, always the average character will be selected. This is like A, this is like B and this is like C. You can see the number of individual of the B variant is more, which is the average character. So this type of natural selection is maintenance. Maintenance says whenever there is no natural selection, whenever there is no natural selection going on the environment, the average variant is selected. Average variant is selected. Okay, so example is like height of the human and weight of newborn. Weight of newborn. Height of the humans and weight of newborn baby, human baby. So when a new baby is born, if a baby is below 2 kg, the baby is not at all healthy, or if the baby is above like 3.5 and 4 kg, again the baby is overweight. The baby which ranges around 3 kgs is considered to be the more healthy baby. Okay, so that's again average character selected. So that's kind of a natural selection is the stabilizing or maintenance. Okay, second is directional. So this one is the directional. This one was stabilizing. This one was stabilizing. Okay, so what happened in the directional one? You will see that here the graph will move into one direction. The graph will move into one direction. A is the one which is less. B is the one which is less, but the one that is always selected is the C character. Like I'm trying to say is that only one of a variant is selected. Okay, and this is always the extreme variant. Either from A or C, one of the extreme variant will be selected. Like industrial melanism. In industrial melanism, either the moth was grey color, which was selected, or it was a black color. There was no in-between average character of the moth. There was no a mid-range of a moth. Either A or C character was selected. So in the directional one of the extreme variant is selected. And you will see the shifting of the graph. Alright, what's the example? The best example is industrial melanism. Also, very good example is antibiotic resistant bacteria. Either the bacteria are resistant to antibiotic or they are not, or they are sensitive. There is no in between. Okay. The last one is disruptive. In disruptive one, this is disruptive. You will see, this is disruptive, that the mid-range, which is the B which we have seen, right? The B one, the average one is not selected, but both the extreme variants, they are higher. So in disruptive one, which is not selected, the average one, both extreme are selected. Both extreme variants are selected. Like corn cob of maize. In maize, you will see that corn cob will be either of the large size or of a very small size. There is no medium size corn cob, right? So that's the three type of natural selection. That's the three type of natural selection that was given by the Darwin. Okay, let's solve some question. In a species, the weight of newborn from 2 to 5 kg of the newborn with an average weight between 3 to 3.3 kg survive, whereas 99% of the infant born with weight from 2 to 2.5 kg or 4.5 to 5 kg die. Which type of selection process is taking place? So A directional, B stabilizing, C disruptive, D cyclical. So it is saying the babies that are born of like around 99% of the babies born between the weight of 3 to 3.3 kgs, they are like maximum. That means they're naturally selected. Okay, so the one which are born around 2 to 2.5 kg and 4.5 to 5 kg, they die. They usually die. So what are selected? The one which is the average character. So this type of selection is stabilizing. B. Okay. So they can give you any kind of an example. You just need to find out what's going on in that. All right. Okay. So next one we have is the artificial selection. Now again, the another evidence Darwin gave was artificial selection. He said that if we human beings, we can produce new species, new breeds, not the species, new breeds in small period of time by just interbreeding the organism, then why not the nature being so powerful? The nature can produce new species in millions of years of evolution. So that gave rise to artificial selection. That is man-made selection. Artificial selection is man-made selection, or we call it as anthropogenic actions. What are anthropogenic action? Man-made actions. Right? So man made different breeds of dog, pigeon varieties, and we also made kale, kohlrabi, cauliflower, broccoli and cabbage from wild mustard variety. So that means if we can make it, nature can make it. So this was the another evidence Darwin gave. Let's solve some questions. Artificial selection to obtain cow yielding high milk output represent. Stabilizing selection at it stabilized this character in the population. Directional as it pushes the mean of a character in one direction. Disruptive as it splits the population into two, one yielding higher output and the other lower output. Stabilizing followed by disruptive as it's stabilizing the population to produce higher yielding cow. Okay, so first of all, it's artificial selection and we are producing high milk output. So we are selecting one of a variant, and when we select one extreme variant, it's always directional. So answer to this question is B. Okay, next is this line: evolution is not a directional process in the sense of determination. It's a stochastic process based on chance events in nature and chance mutation in the organism. So this is a line that is given in NCERT in the mechanism of evolution. What does it mean? So this is a crux of the entire theory that has been given right now, how evolution took place. They said that evolution is not a directed process. Darwin said that evolution is directional. The one which is good will always be selected. But later on, with other people's theory, which we'll study later on, it came out that the evolution is never directed. It's never with a goal. It's random. You never have a probability of anything. So it's not a directed process in the sense of determination. No one has determined it. No one has determined that humans will be formed someday. Humans just formed due to evolution. It's a chance process. It's not a directional process. Okay. It is a stochastic process. Stochastic process means it's the one with the probability. You know what, you never know what will happen. For example, we always say who will win the match. We have no sure determination of this, right? We are always having a probability. Maybe this team will win, maybe that team will win. Okay. Based on chance events in nature and chance mutation in the organism, and that is due to what events that organism is facing. Imagine the organism never faced the competition, no change in environment, there will be no evolution. Like we have done stesiogenesis, static evolution. There was no change in environment, they are as such. The king crab is as such from millions of years. chance mutation in the organism, and that changes that can occur later on, like mutation, that's also a chance process. So from here comes this mutation theory, which is the next theory of evolution, which was given by the scientist Hugo de Vries. Hugo de Vries gave the mutation theory. He performed his experiment on this plant, and the name of the plant is Onotheria lamarckiana, also known as evening primrose. So he did his experiment on this plant, and he came out with one new word, and that was mutations. He explained the mutations or saltations. He said that mutations and saltations, they are the sudden large step, single, non-directional changes that occurs to the organism. Darwin said the changes that occur in the organism are small scale variation. They are very small, they get accumulated and organism get changed. And he also said the changes will always be good. So he gave the directional form of evolution. But on the other hand, Hugo de Vries, he gave new thing. He said that there are certain changes known as mutation, saltation or spots. These are very large, they are single step, they will not be small scale, they will not come and get accumulated. They will just come and the change will occur. That's just single step change, not a many step change. Darwin said that the changes are many step change, and then they will accumulate and become a large variation. A lot of small scale variation, they will become a large scale variation. This is what Darwin said. He said there will be only one large scale in one go, and this will be sudden. It will not be gradual, unlike that of Darwin. It will be sudden and non-directional. And that change, if it is good, that leads to the selection of the organism, natural selection of the organism. If it is not good, the organism may not be selected, organism die. For example, the mutation occurs in the cells of organism, the organism undergo cancer, and this is a bad mutation, the person die. Darwin didn't tell anything about the bad changes. He only told about the good changes. So according to Hugo de Vries, these changes can occur. The changes can be good or bad. If these are good, the organism is naturally selected. There will be a natural selection. If it is bad, then the organism will die. Though natural selection term was given by Darwin only, that was not given by Hugo de Vries. Hugo de Vries explained about mutations. Now let's see what is the difference between the Hugo de Vries theory and the Darwin's theory. Darwin gave variation, Hugo de Vries gave mutation. According to Darwin, the changes are small. According to Hugo de Vries, the changes are large. Okay, the changes or the variations, they are directional. Here it is random and non-directional. They will be always be slow and gradual, and they will be just single step and sudden mutations. Okay, so changes word was not used. Rather, in spite of change, Darwin used the word variation, and Hugo de Vries used the word mutation, and their definition of those change was also different. Now let's solve some questions. Variations caused by mutation as proposed by Hugo de Vries are random and directionless, small and directional, small and directionless. They were large, they were random and directionless. So answer is B, right? Okay, next question. According to Hugo de Vries, the mechanism of evolution is single step mutation, saltation, minor mutation, and multiple step mutation, saltation, minor mutation, phenotypic variation. Variation was not used by Hugo de Vries. They were not minor changes, they were large changes. They were not multiple, rather single step. And yes, they are known as saltation or spots. So answer is B. Next. Industrial Melanism is an example of Neo-Lamarckism, Neo-Darwinism, natural selection and mutation. Simple, natural selection. Now you must be wondering, man, what are these neo? Neo means new. After some scientists have manipulated the theory of Lamarckism, that becomes Neo-Lamarckism. Like they found some faults in the Lamarck's theory. They put out those faults, correct it, and they came up with a new theory, Neo-Lamarckism, right? Just like that, whatever faults were there in the Darwin's theory, they were put out, and then the new things were added. Like Darwin didn't mention about mutation. So if you put mutation in a Darwin's theory, it becomes a new Darwin's theory. That's Neo-Darwinism. Okay, all right. The Galapagos Islands are home of more than a dozen species of closely related finches. It is an example of, yes, adaptive radiation, natural selection, allopathic speciation, all of these. So Darwin's finches is an example of natural selection and adaptive radiation. What is allopathic speciation? We'll be doing in the next class. It's a type of formation of species. Okay. All right. Okay, that's the repetitive. So that's it about the theories of evolution, how evolution took place and explained beautifully by various scientists. We'll be doing other aspects of evolution in the next class. Till then, read the NCERT, learn whatever I've taught you, and dwell into the universe of changes of evolution, right? So I'll meet in the next class. Bye bye, take care.